we actually know about improving the quality of instruction in our nation's classrooms? Not much, is the sad fact. This is the Penn GSE Edcast, where you get perspectives on education and social science from the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. I'm your host, Tom Ketchkamethy, and today we've got 10 good minutes with Elliot Weinbaum. He's a research assistant professor here at Penn GSE. Elliot's work centers on education policy and the effect that various education policies have on teaching and learning. My talk with Elliot started with a discussion about the quality of research that guides education policymakers and teachers and school leaders out there in the field. There are some good, high-quality scientific studies that look into these questions, but the problem, in Elliot's view, is that those findings are often not generalizable. What we find out about the effects of a new math curriculum right here in Philly in 2011, for instance, might not work over there in Detroit or up there in New York. Just a quick heads up about what you're going to hear from Elliot in a second here. He's going to talk about school improvement options. What he's referring to are options for turning around low-performing schools that the federal government mandates through one of its major grant initiatives.
With respect to developing a quality research base to inform practitioners in their work of instructional improvement, what kind of work are you working on? What kind of research do you think is most useful?
What it tells us probably is that we need to help people in schools and districts and states learn about how to study their own practice and see what's working for them, because I don't think there's going to be a what works for America as a whole.
All right.
There's going to be a what works in Philadelphia, and there's going to be a what works in Camden, and a what works in Iowa or California or wherever.
So if that's where you think we ought to be going, which is helping practitioners in local contexts figure out what's going to work for them, then that leads to the policy portion of my question, which is, from your perspective, how well aligned are we between current policies in play, federal and state-based, and the work of instructional improvement that needs to be going on?
I think we're headed in a entirely wrong direction, quite frankly. I mean, there's these school improvement options for failing schools there's basically four, right? One, you can close the school. Two, you can change half the staff. Three, you can give it to an outside management organization. And four, you can change the principal and the staff, four is you can adopt a basket of sort of improvement efforts. There's actually no evidence to suggest that any of those four serve kids better or serve kids at all.
So I guess the why are we going this way with policy isn't really a question for you, but then where, if you were the benevolent dictator, would you take us from a policy perspective?
So that's the other half that I was going to say, the research half of the Department of Ed in Washington,
right, yeah.
Which is changing its focus to develop research capacity at the local level and to form partnerships between school districts and people with some knowledge of research practice, or between states and research practice. And I think that's the promising direction, right? That the School District of Philadelphia could partner with researchers here in Philadelphia to look at the impacts of what they're doing here in real time, and look at indicators that matter for kids here in a rigorous fashion, and quickly feed back information into the system that would allow them to make changes along the way. So that, for example, research was done by Research for Action just up the street about the distribution of teachers across schools in Philadelphia. And you find that more privileged, more successful schools have more experienced teachers. That would suggest a maldistribution of teachers if you're concerned about closing achievement gaps, right? You're giving more experience, more long-term teachers to those kids that come from wealthier, more educated households that are already performing at higher levels, and you're giving brand new teachers with little experience to kids that are struggling in a number of areas. That kind of information fed back to a district that's interested in hearing it can lead to immediate change on the ground. Real partnerships between practitioners and researchers, I think that's the direction we need to be going in.
So this does point to a difference in kind of the theory of action of federal policy.
Yeah, it's a couple of things, I think. One is the original role of the federal government in education was really just research, right? I mean, that's what the Office of Education was started for, and it was all about research. And I think that's an entirely appropriate role, because they can look across so many contexts and they can coordinate efforts on a scale that obviously no one else can. And so I think building on that, the idea of having standards. Now there's a move towards national standards and developing a common metric through which everyone would be assessed based on those standards. That seems like an entirely appropriate role for the federal government to play, right? That kids in Pennsylvania are this close, kids in Mississippi are this close, there's a common standard, we can put it out there. The information is available. Maybe the carrots and sticks is even appropriate, right? That there are rewards for showing great progress and there are consequences for showing lack of progress on that common metric. Maybe that's appropriate. What I'm not sure is appropriate is prescribing how to make progress, because I don't think we know, right? That's the problem. So, I'm working on this study of No Child Left Behind in Pennsylvania right now that we began in a collaborative fashion with the State Department of Education to see what the meaning of No Child Left Behind was for schools. And what we find is that, contrary to what most people have thought, we have a survey of all 3,000 schools in the state, and it offers principals the opportunity to mark how much effort they're devoting to a range of 40 different improvement strategies. And the high-performing schools and low-performing schools, or schools that are making adequate yearly progress and schools that aren't making adequate yearly progress, mark the same things. They rank them in the same order. The ones that aren't making adequate yearly progress say they're working a little bit harder on those same strategies, but they're using the same strategies, right? There's a basket of strategies that schools tend to be using. If the intent of the policy was that somehow schools were going to transform what they were doing based on this information, it's a failure. I mean, I think it's caused some changes around the edges, and it's certainly given us some better information about how schools are doing because we have regular testing and we have a common standard across the state and a common assessment, et cetera. But we don't have a lot of the fine-grained work that's really needed to go into schools and support them and have them think critically about their results and how to make changes and then attribute changes in student achievement to the changes they've made in their practice and draw that connection in some kind of systematic way.
Give me a reason to think of the glass as half full when it comes to
Okay, wrong office.
No. When it comes to local schools and local classes doing a good job of assessing their own professional practice. Give me some examples. It can't be that there aren't strong examples out there.
Yeah, I think there are some, and I think that the growing literature around professional learning communities in which teachers can get together and talk about their own practice, the practice of their small cohort of teachers, and get into each other's classrooms and look at what's going on and have multiple eyes on that work is promising. And that idea that the expertise lies in to some extent within the group, and where it's not to be found in the group, there are folks who can reach out to outside information sources and pull it in and apply it to the specific context that they're working with. And so I think that's one example. Denver had a teacher evaluation and incentive system that was based heavily on bringing peers into the classroom to look at the practices of a teacher and to evaluate those practices and give feedback about them. That was another one that I think is quite promising in terms of the kinds of systems that can be set up to help teachers really think critically about their own practices, not follow external directives blindly. And there are places that are trying this. That, as I say, it's hard to sustain and it's hard to mandate from a policy on high, because you need a group of teachers who are able and willing to collaborate as a team. And all the literature around team building is fraught with stories about how challenging that can be, but it's definitely possible.
The Penn GSE Edcast is a production of the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education, and it's produced by me, with editorial assistance from John Wallace and technical direction from Kaja Novatsky. For more about Elliot's work, you can visit our website, www.gse.upenn.edu, or the Consortium for Policy Research and Education at www.cpre.org. Thanks for downloading. See you next time.